Thank you so very much. And welcome, everyone. Welcome to 2022. I just love the sound of that, don't you? And Linda's right. I mean, I am thrilled that you're here. Obviously, you already have an idea that storytelling is probably a skill that might be an essential business skill. That's what I always say. And I am honored here today to really talk about this subject. Now, the title, where we say it's master, here we go, hang on, mastering storytelling, it won't happen in an hour, okay? It takes practice. But what we're going to learn today, we're going to learn the elements, and we're going to learn the why some of the biggest leaders in the world are some of the best storytellers. When you think about Brené Brown or Simon Sinek or Esther Hicks or Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, they're storytellers. And why are they so good? It's because they're doing certain tactics and skill sets that they know are creating incredible images and emotions inside you. And as Linda said, it's true. I have been studying the art of storytelling since I was 9 years old. So I am now pushing, I'm 56, so I'm now pushing 47 years of studying, performing, writing, and standing up on stages, telling stories to people. Many times they've been personal stories. So like what you saw with some of the logos I have where I've been on the Moth and NPR and PBS, but also many, many, many business stories, because my background prior to Story Fruition is that I was in enterprise advertising sales. And so I would step into very high level meetings and you have to tell case studies, success stories. You have to be able to be a startup and tell a great vision story, right? And so how do you do that surpasses what your competitors are doing? Who here, and you can put it in the chat since I see a lot of cameras not on, and we welcome your cameras on. It's nice to see the human faces here. Hint, hint, I want your camera on. But, you know, who here, when you look at 2022, are you thinking it is a fresh start? I do want to expand a new skill set. And if you want to put in the chat already some of your thoughts about why you know or why you want to embrace more storytelling skills, please do, and we'll take a look at those. And throughout this conversation, I will be telling stories. And so I want you to be paying attention a little bit more acutely as to some of the things that I'm doing. And you can jot them down in the chat and let's just engage, because today's going to be fun. The work that I do is fun. So many of my clients, in fact, all of my clients, when we first start, I hear when the podcast interviewer or the media interviewer says, so tell us your story, Linda. How'd you get into this work? How'd you start this amazing network? Many people just go, oh God, I hate that question. And it's such an important question. When you're asked something like that, do you feel as though you're nailing it? Do you have it nailed, or do you feel like, oh God, I'm kind of meandering around? Or I find myself sometimes just doing my LinkedIn resume, and that's not really what they want. And I can tell you right now, the podcasters, the interviewers are aching, begging, hoping, begging that you're a storyteller, because you're going to be what? Captivating. People are going to be leaning in. And that's my work. That's what I want for you too. Because when you become an amazing storyteller, as Linda said earlier, you are more magnetic. You're more attractive to be listened to. I've had many, many clients say to me, I know I'm good at what I do. I know how to do it. I just sometimes feel like I'm not being completely given credit for it, or I'm not being seen because I'm a little quiet about what I do. But it's okay, because when you're telling stories, when you're engaging with your audience, you're sharing really your wisdom. All right. So please, if you have any hesitation that your stories don't matter, I can promise you that they do. We walk around this planet for now me over 5 decades. I have lots of wisdom to share. And as we get older in our careers, the younger generation that's coming up behind looks to us to lead them. And we have so many more life chapters of personal events that have happened, professional events. Some of them are funny, some of them are poignant, and some of them are hilarious, and some of them are just amazing lessons that you learned along the way. So today we're going to talk about like finding some of those aha moments that you've had where your story sits. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn my slide. Here we go. We want to really be captivating. So think of a Zoom meeting as a stage. Okay, I'm on a stage right now, and I will be sharing stories with you. You'll be listening, hopefully, with intent to learn and to grow. That's what you're doing every time you talk to a partner, a client, someone in your C-suite, your sales reps. You're telling them stories so that they get inspired and motivated and they want to move out into the world and represent you or work with you. So here's the tip. This is storytelling. It's a mind movie, okay? And this is something that I started to realize because I myself study storytelling. I'm not only on stages doing this work, but I study it almost 4 hours a week in a mastermind. And the reason why I can tell a story very quickly and on the fly is because I've worked the muscle. It's just a muscle. When you start to learn, okay, these are the core elements. These are the things that are putting the images inside the mind of the listener. Because as a storyteller, as Steve Jobs said, the storyteller is the most powerful person in the world. And it comes with not only power because you're holding attention, but it comes with obligation, because you got to keep their attention. And with storytelling, especially in business, we are educating as well as entertaining and keeping their attention on the mark. And so many times I see mistakes from early learners of storytelling is that they're kind of skipping out on some major things that cause what I always say the storyteller needs to keep the train on the tracks. I'm writing a book right now. It's going to be coming out this year. And I talk about it a lot. It's like, you got to keep the train on the tracks, because some things that you can do in storytelling is you can derail your story by simply missing key elements, not being really clear, or not being in some of your core stories really honestly rehearsed. You know these stories so well, and they're so well crafted that you know that you've got the train on the tracks. Okay. And that's really important. Sometimes I'll hear someone say, yeah, so the first time I learned that I was an entrepreneur, I was a little kid and I had a lemonade stand. Now, the first thing right now, I'm already derailed in something like that, because I'll be like, how old were you? How old were you? Because right now I'm wondering, were you 6? Were you 11? Were you 18? How old were you when you have your lemonade stand? So as a storyteller, you want to start off right away clearing so much information so that people can see you set the scene of a mind movie. So every story that I work with the client, I look at it as a mind movie. It's going to have an opening scene, a second scene, a third scene, a fourth scene. We move into storyboarding. And these are the things that I teach in my workshops. Okay. So these are the tools and tactics that you can use to memorize your story and have a record of it. So storyboarding is something that we will talk about in a workshop. And as we move through this, I will be having a February challenge that I am inviting you all to participate in, because this will really kickstart your skill sets to really seize, what you're looking for to have happen in your business in 2022. I see that someone loves my mind movie. I do too. And once I've realized that, it really made a difference in the way I tell my stories. So I'm going to tell a story here about Anne. So Anne, I met Anne a few years ago. She actually saw me performing in an improv show. And immediately, right afterwards, we started talking, and I told her about what I did. Anne is a publisher. She's an entrepreneur. She works for N2 Publishing. She represents high-end, upscale magazines in her community of Kirkland, Washington. I myself had been an ad director for probably 15 years in my career. That's what I did. Started newspapers, ran their advertising. So we already created a connection. Anne was a little bit quiet and reserved. And she said, I don't know if I can tell people my story. I'm like, why not? She's like, it's too personal. No one wants to hear that. I'm like, well, let me hear your story. And she proceeds to tell me how she got to N2. And I was blown away. I'm like, Anne, why are you not telling this story? And she was just shy and resistant and thought, no, I need to have my business cap on. I'm a woman in business. I can't be vulnerable. Well, vulnerability, admitting moments when you were just maybe the village idiot, or you were felt like you were coming out of a smoldering plane crash because your life had fallen apart. Those are your richest stories sometimes. And so how can you learn to tell them so that you can share that wisdom with another? Anne's story started with the fact that she was having the dream of her life. She was with her husband and they were going to start a winery, and she loved Mike so much. They were like that happy couple that everyone knew. And they bought a home out in Lake Clay Elum, Washington, and they were going to start this winery. Well, Mike was out on business that day, and she's sitting on the couch with her 16-year-old son, and they're just watching television. And as her feet are up on the table, she's just sitting on the couch with him, and she thought, this is nice. I haven't really had much time with Sean because like he just wants to be with his dad a lot more, and I'm okay with that. I get it. But this right now is nice. The door knocked. I don't know who's going to be here. It wouldn't be Mike because he comes home through the garage. She opens the door and there's a policeman standing there. He says, excuse me, are you Mrs. Hess? Yeah. I need to tell you that your husband died in a car accident tonight on the side of the freeway. And immediately her 16-year-old son jumps into her arms and they fall to the ground and they cannot believe what they're hearing. So needless to say, life just threw a major event at her. And after the dust settled, she realized she had to now, what is she going to do? What is she going to do? And so she, started digging in, and the universe started guiding her. The next thing you know, she's like, I'm going to go to Seattle and I'm going to start this publication. And I love community. I love advertising. It's my background, and I'm going to learn. I told her that, Anne, that is a gorgeous story. So we started putting it together. We started finding more stories, and she started inserting stories into her presentations that she hadn't done before. And her confidence started gaining and picking up speed until one day she told this story to her favorite client. And she said, the moment that I did that, I connected to him like I had never seen before. And after that, the Rotary wanted to talk to me. And after that, the Rotary guys, two of them started crying in the middle of the presentation, and they were city leaders because Rotarians are usually big players in your community. They're wealthy, they're connected. And from her having the guts to get up there and tell that story, and she actually had 45 minutes to tell the story, so that one was just the only part. She was now in. Her most highest fear of sharing that story, thinking it was something she shouldn't share, ended up being the key to unlocking her potential in her community. And so storytelling now has become a very important skill set for Anne. There we go. Gotta watch this thing. But it was the aha, it's the aha, something just happened. And sometimes people will say, well, it's when he died. That in that story, it was the aha when he died. It wasn't really the aha. The inciting event for Anne's story was that her husband died in a car crash. And then the next event was that she realized she had to still support herself, and then she had to get herself to Seattle and start this endeavor because it spoke to her heart. But really the aha was when she realized that her wisdom and her story and her adventure through this incredible chapter mattered, and that she could see herself being resilient. We all have so many stories that we can tell. And I encourage, when I'm working with clients, either in groups or like right now or one-on-one, is that we start developing your own story library, right? Because you have resilience stories, you have case studies, vision stories. I've already told you about some of these. How many, if you have in the chat, how many of you have staffs that are also out there representing your company and need to tell stories? Because every company also has core stories, right? You have the founder story, the vision, the brand story, like how the brand, and I'm going to tell you, the brand story is not a timeline. I've seen far too many timelines and people are telling me that's their brand story. No, that's a chart. You need to, but case studies are some of the most important stories that you can tell, because that's where you have your customer who is having a problem and you came in and you solved it. But what happened? When I was in enterprise sales, oftentimes we would get the one sheets from marketing, people from Linda, give me the one sheet. How do we do in the financial vertical? Linda, I need a one sheet. And Linda hands you this well-written, very good case study that shows you the percents and the KPIs. But the good storyteller will look at the client as a human being and really be able to communicate the emotions of that, right? And so then when the events of the company, you coming in and solving the problem, you're now the hero, right? A well-told story will position you as a hero, which will then help you gain more market share, because people are going to see you as more superior, simply because some of your salespeople are great storytellers. So one of the things I love to do is say, listen, let's create an army of storytellers within your organization. So creating a library that your people can go to and pull these stories out and learn how to tell them is something to think about for 2022, as well as for yourself. So if you're thinking, yeah, I'm going to get an edge on my competitors. Yeah, I'm tired of my competitors getting the media spots, not me. That might be because your storytelling skills could just use a little boost. And that's where I'm at. Okay. Oh, so I see someone liked Anne's story. I know. Can you believe that she was shy to tell that? I was just like, no, Anne, you have to tell that story. Here's another one. And this is where I, on my own journey of my own story fruition, if you will, I walk into Seattle University and they have a business plan competition, high stakes, $10,000, accolades, all the schwanky angel investors are gathered in this conference room waiting for the next big thing. When I was watching the students get up there and over and over and over again do the same damn thing. They would flash a sign, they would flash a presentation slide that said problem, and there'd be tons of graphs on it, tons of words, and then solution, and then there'd be more graphs, more words, couple of those, and it was just confusing. And it was very, very left brain, and we need left brain and right brain to come together. So I walked in to meet the students that were in this competition, and it was kind of a cloudy, early spring day in Seattle. The crocus were just starting to come up out of the ground. When I walked in and I met the teams, and I had 3 teams in the room, and all 3 were starting to do the same thing when I asked them what their idea was. They did the problem solution model until I met Daniel. And Daniel was one of those quiet guys, the kind, that sits at the table and doesn't say a lot because he's analyzing, he's assessing. But once he does start to talk, he has a hell of a lot to say. That guy. Yeah. And with his ginger little hair, he looks at me and I said, so what do you do? He goes, oh, well, I'd like to unite artisan furniture makers, because I'm an artisan furniture maker, and with buyers, because they're high end and they appreciate better furniture. I'm like, okay, all right. So who's your customer? A woman, 25 to 54 years old, and she makes $75,000 a year. I'm like, really? What does a 54-year-old woman have a lot to do in common with a 25-year-old woman? We can cook dinner. We can, we might be able to talk about some things, but our life chapters are so much different. So let's dig in there. And we kept digging and digging and digging to find out really who his audience was. When it dawned on me, oh my God, I was your audience when I was 28 years old. When I started making money, I started to realize, I don't need to work out of IKEA anymore. I don't need to have a milk crate be my TV stand. No, I walk into this store and there's this genius furniture maker. Amazing. He can hardly speak English. He comes from Mexico and he has all that gorgeous pine furniture that, remember back in the 90s, like Pottery Barn, that was like the look. I went nuts. I went in there, I bought an armoire, a pine table, he did my desk, I bought a sleigh bed and 6 chairs. When people walked into our apartment, I was supposedly not only just in ad sales at the time, but I was trying to be an actor. So our actor friends would walk in with me and my husband, and they'd be like, "You guys look like adults." Like, because our home was our castle. As I'm telling this to Daniel, he completely sees the aha moment. And he steps up on the stage 2 weeks later, and he says to the audience, so imagine when you're coming home at night and you're exhausted after a day's work and you just want to have your beverage. You put your feet down and you put your drink down and you notice how gorgeous your home is because you have beautiful furniture. How does that make you feel? Does that make you feel the success of who you are? Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm the CEO of Teak and Timber, and we're going to be uniting artisan furniture makers with customers like you so that your world can be the world of your success that you've always imagined. As he's speaking, I hear someone behind me. I'm just like so proud. I'm glowing. And as there's someone behind me and I hear, Frank, that reminds me of the table that we had from your grandmother. It's so beautiful. That's a compliment when you start hearing that people are remembering their own stories because you've sparked that. That means you've got them engaged. And Daniel went on to place, not only he placed second in the competition. I also coached the first place person, but he came in second and he raised $100,000 in funding for his idea. And he started storytelling right and left. So again, vision stories, connecting to your audience, and telling the story so that it's vivid. Now, there are things that I was doing in that story that I would teach you more in workshops. There were things where I stepped into the characters. So when you're a storyteller, a good storyteller moves in and out of being the narrator and in the scenes, right? So I also am trying to describe the environment that is around me. And what I'm doing here is called Crow. And in a workshop, I'm going to dig deep with you into how to do this, okay? Because this is where you get the mind movie going. You've got characters who have relationships. They have something going on. The point to your story has to be clear. And the where. When you walk in. So when I walked in the last story, or even with Anne's story, I had you all seeing her on the couch watching television with her son, right? And she says, this feels so nice. That's an inner thought that storytellers do. And she was just thinking to herself how great it was. And I was setting it up knowing that I was about to probably punch in the gut when the policeman is at the door, right? And so there's elements in storytelling where we're going to be moving in and out of emotions very carefully and being very aware of how your audience is reacting. So sometimes if you're about to tell something really serious, you might want to make them laugh, or you might want to make them laugh afterwards. So those are the more advanced skills that we talk about when I start teaching advanced storytelling. I'm seeing Linda's, yes, invokes a sense of purpose, yes, and it can captivate your audience, that's correct. In the where portion, we'll explore not only the physical where and trying to describe the where just enough for the listener to see the mind movie. You don't have to describe everything. And in fact, sometimes people, who here, I want to ask you, who here has a friend that might tell a story and they never get to the point? They just keep expanding and telling so many details and they don't move on. That's advance and expand. And that's the art of making sure your story has a beginning, middle, and you get to the end. So you have to be able to know how much detail you have. So with the where, I don't have to tell you her whole house. I didn't have to tell you it was a 2-story mansion with stairs going up the case. No, I just put you right in the family room where the room was, on the couch, and I wanted to evoke the emotion. And then the door knocked. I don't care what the door looked like in your heads, but maybe you saw your own front door, right? Maybe you tried to imagine Anne's door. That's okay. It doesn't matter, but you saw a door, and then did you see a policeman? And when you saw the policeman, what did you think? This might not be good news. right? Policemen don't come by and say, hey, I brought you some cookies. No, they're coming late at night. There's something that's about to happen. So there's that anticipation and that tension that a storyteller knows they're doing. And then you are responsible. Remember, I said you have an obligation. You are responsible for taking care of your audience, making sure as you're telling your stories on these podcasts that you're in control and you're aware of when you have to allow your audience to get relief. Okay, but keep the story going.